What we're doing here is
Okay.
we're doing this for we're meeting at Southport School, and we're having a screening on what date are we having that? Pretty soon.
It's April coming up, end of April.
Okay. So you're going to be on the panel, and so we're going to ask you some questions. And one of the first questions was Waterbury, Connecticut. You got this program going in Waterbury, Connecticut. Was it hard? Was it easy? How did you get this thing set up that you now have the success in?
Oh, piece of cake. No, I'm just kidding. So we we had one curriculum in place. We had a consultant come in many years ago, I want to say 2013 or so, around the time I came into the position here. And some of the curriculum with the consultant had great pieces in it, but then we noticed that there was some misalignment with science of reading. And our teachers at the time were a little upset. They were calling themselves hunters and gatherers, and I quote that from a survey that they provided. And I couldn't agree with them more. And so collectively, we went out and we started to look for some programs that would support the curriculum in a more robust way to address, all the sides of the simple view of reading or Scarborough's rope, whatever you're looking at, to make sure that, we had everything inclusive there. So because the outcry, it didn't have to come from just me. It came from the teachers and wanting particular resources and things. It was really an easy sell. We all wanted the same thing. They wanted resources, and I wanted to make sure that the resources they had were evidence-based. So we worked together through that process to find a program for the city, and we really built a curriculum that included several evidence-based programs and pieces of programs here to cover everything that we needed to in the city. But it's not easy. We have over 400 or so elementary teachers. We serve over 8,500 kids in the elementary schools. About 20% of our population are multilingual learners. So we want to make sure we have strong curriculum and instruction in place to service the needs of kids whose primary language is not English. We have, I think it's 52 now, different languages spoken in the district. We have nearly 80% of our kids as receiving free and reduced lunch. So we have a lot of needs in the city. And with all of that, and with an urban district, usually comes a lot of transients. So we have students moving from one building to another. And I should mention, we have across the city 23 different elementary school buildings. And so if kids move their, home location, they can go from one school to another school all across the city. So our curriculum, our pacing guides, the materials we were using, it's so important to be consistent, because if a child is in one school one day and then goes to another school the next day, we don't want them to have gaps in their learning. We don't want them to have redundancies where they've already done something. So our teachers are excellent at keeping sort of a consistent cadence and rhythm, but that's not easy to do. I mean, that really has to be clearly communicated and shared widely so that everybody's sort of in the same place. But with student transients, we also have teacher transients where teachers are, coming into the district and oftentimes leaving the district. And so there's a lot of things to put in place to be able to support teachers when they're new to a district, when they're new to the district, particularly in regards to the reading curriculum. And that's just one part of what an elementary teacher teaches all day, right? They're doing all the subjects. In fact, I'll mention we have a 20-item new teacher onboarding guide that our literacy facilitators use with every new elementary teacher that comes into the district. And it takes them, I would say it's like the full year to get through the entire guide to fully onboard a teacher to know everything that we're doing in our systems and processes. And that's just for reading and English language arts. And so there's a lot there. And then on top of transients, we have attendance issues. We have student attendance issues. We have staff attendance issues, which was just exacerbated, by COVID and CDC guidelines with staying home and, all of that. So So that's really hard because then when you have a certain rhythm and you have a pacing guide, you fall off that if your kids are absent and now you need to reteach, or if you're absent as a teacher and you need to catch up. So, there are certainly lots of challenges we face, particularly in a larger district, because, and I think you've heard me say this before, Harvey, our idea is, we go big or go home. We don't really pilot things in one or two locations or try something out here and not here. We're a district. We're unified. In fact, at the end of the documentary, a gentleman in Waterbury at the gathering said it beautifully. He said there's, the word unity is in community. And I think that's present in all we do, particularly our cadence and how we roll things out here. It's all district, all 23 schools, all 400 plus classrooms, having to march essentially to the same beat.
That really is remarkable. And I have a question about what if you have, you mentioned how many schools you have, and when we were there, we saw the kids at one school is doing the same thing as the kids at the other school. But that's great on the first day of school. That's fine that they're doing it. But what happens if there's a pipe break? What happens if there's asbestos in the school? I mean, are you skipping ahead? And you're I know you're not. Because I know what you guys do. I don't know how you do it. How do you do the magic if you have to close school down for a day, or as you said, a teacher's sick or the kids are gone, but if everybody's at the same place, and how many first graders are all at the same place? What's the secret? What's the magic sauce?
So we have a very detailed scope and sequence that goes by the days of the year. So days 1 through 5, days 6 through 10, and it goes on, so forth, in 5-day segments throughout the year. We account for all of the days that we have off. We account for the snow days and things like that. We have not. We had one school last year, the year before, that had a flood over the holidays, and it impacted their school start times a little. But we haven't had an emergency, even given our size, where we've had an elementary school closed for a day and all of the other schools were in operation. There might be a classroom closed because of something like a pipe or, an issue within the building, but then that classroom just gets, redistributed to other areas within the school building for the day or something, so that their learning isn't interrupted in that regard. So we've been lucky with that. But as far as like any absences, that can be a problem, and that throws off the pacing guide for sure. Like if the teacher's not there, like the teacher was out sick for a day to 5 days, whatever it is, that's going to throw off that pacing guide. So I would say all of our teachers are on the pacing guide, and maybe 1 to 2 weeks potentially off a bit. But for the most part, they stay in that cadence. We have biweekly meetings across the district with every single grade level teacher. They meet in grade level teams, and those meetings are attended by the principal, and they're led by the literacy facilitators. And I should note that every single building, all 23, has a literacy facilitator, its own dedicated literacy facilitator. So this is an adult who's extremely well versed and trained in early reading and language arts and those skills and concepts and instruction. And every building also has at least 1 to 3 reading teachers to support, and they work predominantly with the kids who need, the most attention. But those biweekly meetings with the grade level teams led by the literacy facilitators, they're able to keep a pacing and a cadence to know where everybody should be, what they're doing, and to really problem solve if there are challenges or barriers that get in the way that might mess up, that schedule for one reason or another. And it helps keep the cadence. And yeah, of course, it's easy on the first day to be on the same page because everybody's here. It's day one. But I can tell you last week, Harvey, I was in 5 different schools in one day all across the city. And I was going to visit first and second grade classrooms with a micro strategy we were implementing on increasing student practice with word reading, like at the word level and at the text level. And anyway, from one school to the next, everybody was on the same unit and same week in first and second grade. So within that unit and that week, you might have been on day 1 and somebody else was on day 4, but they all nailed where they were in the week, and it's March. So I would say those, the systems we have in place help to support teachers keep to that cadence.
So I know you have these reading facilitators and these reading teachers. Do they swap them around? I mean, as you said, you have other things going on, but do you swap them around if somebody's out sick for 5 days?
So that's a great question. So the facilitators and reading teachers are specific to their school. If I'm going to have a facilitator who's going to be out for something long term, or if somebody, I'm proud to say that 7 of our administrators in the district right now all came from the reading department. And so sometimes we lose our facilitators to other positions in the district, which is great, right? Because now we have instructional leaders that have strong background in reading. So selfishly, I love that. But now I need to replace them. So if something like that happens or somebody falls ill for extended time, we'll split those positions and I'll have a facilitator temporarily service 2 schools. But the district has been great in funding and keeping funding for those positions. In fact, they doubled those positions several years ago now, 6, 7 years ago, so that every school had their own facilitator. So we can share like that. We don't do that with reading teachers because our reading teachers have to meet with our students every single day. They meet with them for a period of 45 minutes. And so you can't meet with kids and improve their reading, our neediest kids, on Monday, Tuesday, and then be at another school Thursday and another school Friday because they need that consistent daily approach. So that position, because it works with children specifically and not the adults, is really never split. Now, I will say if we have, say, a first grade teacher or a second grade teacher that's out for extended time, it could be maternity, it could be illness, it could be they left for another district and we haven't replaced the classroom teacher yet and there's a sub. The facilitator will make sure that they go in and it's not just about coaching cycles with the individual that's in there, but sometimes they'll teach the actual reading lesson so that the kids get that consistent, instruction without a break in how it's being delivered for them. So that does happen. And sometimes too, our reading teachers, particularly in the time of COVID, when we just had more absences, than we could handle, it was sort of an all hands on deck. And our reading teachers went in and sort of substituted the reading, particularly the reading classes, sometimes the whole day, but most of the time the reading classes for the classrooms that didn't have the certified teacher in at the moment.
Well, I mean, you said it. There's unity and community. It's like a top-down approach, I think, with you guys. I mean, one of the reasons we went to you guys because you guys are you're doing it right. So, professional development. How do you do this professional development? You got this onboard magic book that you have, that your onboarding magic book. You have teachers. You have older teachers that maybe didn't want to make the change at a certain time, but you really do have people are proud of what they're doing and their job. So what? Talk to me. Give me the secrets of professional development and how it plays a crucial role.
Absolutely. So it's never your curriculum and it's never your program that teaches the kids, right? It's the teachers that teach the kids and they bring all that to life and those are the tools and resources they use. And so I was saying some years ago, we had a literacy facilitator who supported the schools, but they were always split. And it was really hard to be consistent in supporting the adults when a person who was doing that job was only there part time because they were split across the district. And there's so many moving parts in reading and language arts, and now so many new teachers that the schools really needed their own, full time dedicated person to do that. And so the city invested a lot of money and continues to invest a lot of money in our literacy facilitators to ensure that every building has its own dedicated staff for that role. And the literacy facilitators are just crucial. They are the center of our professional development secret here because when you have over 400 classroom teachers, I want to say the last time I checked, we had 86 kindergarten teachers. They're our largest group of teachers because our class size is set to 20. So we have more kindergarten teachers than some of the other grades. You can't put 86 teachers in a room and train them. I mean, it's just not engaging in that way. Teachers don't have access to their materials. If we find a room that would be big enough, an auditorium to fit 86 kindergarten teachers, like it just doesn't work. So yes, we do have full day professional development, and usually because the elementary teacher teaches all subjects, half of the day is spent on reading or language arts, and the other half of their full day is spent on either math or science. They'll flip flop to give teachers that support. But I'll tell you this, I can't be in 23 schools all at one time. Sometimes a little bit virtually if I do like a little webinar or something like that. But those aren't always engaging as having real FaceTime with somebody. And usually that type of format is more or less a stand and deliver, like where you're giving information. And that's an important piece. But your PD has to go beyond just giving information and it has to go beyond workshops. Those are a component, right? An explanation, a model, things like that. the literacy facilitators are key to our whole professional development program and our, our literacy program in general, everything, because they meet with me weekly. They get training. Like, so for example, we had training with Literacy How, and Margie's team trained actually the entire reading department, all the reading teachers and the literacy facilitators in their structured literacy series 2, which was last year into the beginning of this year. And part of that included language comprehension, which has been a really big push for us the last few years. And we rolled out some PD that I worked collaboratively on with our friends from Hill for Literacy, another organization we work with, and to develop those workshops. And then we trained the literacy facilitators on those particular workshops, and then the literacy facilitators on those designated PD days deliver the information to their staff so that they could all be together as a learning community within their schools with their materials and research resources with that PD that's led by the literacy facilitator. So it's sort of like a train the trainer model. We've heard of these top, sort of models before. And so they're integral to that. And to take it a step further, we dedicated some time, those bi-weekly meetings that the literacy facilitators have with the teachers. Sometimes they're looking at data and how kids are responding to instruction and setting next steps and goals for kids. And other times now they're rolling in some professional development. So we curated a whole sort of site of little mini PD modules tied to routines and instructional content that could be delivered in about 40 minutes. And those meetings typically run 45 minutes. So they can deliver a small piece of information where they're explaining, they're modeling, they're providing rationale and research as to why we're doing what we're doing. It's important for adults to understand that as adult learners. And then before the teachers leave that meeting, which is happening during the school day, it's built into the schedule. So it's not an after school thing. They sign up with the literacy facilitators for in-class modeling and coaching, and then teaching back with feedback. So before they even leave, there's a schedule set. So let's just say our facilitators were going over high frequency words with teachers, the importance of why we teach them, how we teach them, strategies, the research behind that. They might model within that meeting what this routine might look like for teaching high frequency words. And then they go into the classroom on a designated day that the teacher picks. It's about a 45-minute period that they're in the room. The teacher, the facilitator rather, will model that with real kids, with our kids in our classroom, specifically the teacher's classroom, so that context is authentic and it's happening during the school day. I would say that it's impossible to have meaningful PD when kids aren't present. Sure, you can have a workshop and give information, but if you want to change practice in any way, the PD has to apply to the practice. And when you're applying something as a classroom teacher in the context of your classroom with your kids and your particular challenges within your own classroom, because every classroom is a little different, every school is a little different, every district and community is a little different. It's applicable to your setting. It makes it more authentic. So the facilitator will model something, and right then in that moment, they switch seats. The teacher then models, and the facilitator becomes the observer and gives immediate feedback right then and there in this 45-minute exchange. Then they meet again in their group grade level meeting. There's overall feedback or plans, and then they can go in for another coaching cycle as needed by the teachers. And our coaching is not for new teachers. It's not for resistant teachers. It's not for teachers who just need more support. Our coaching model applies to everyone. So the guiding principle is at the end of this meeting, everybody signs up for coaching. Everybody gets a cycle of coaching, and the facilitator will differentiate that coaching based on your needs as an individual. So if we do that for kids and we support kids in that way, we feel very strongly that we should do that for the adults who provide all of these services and supports to kids as well.
You guys are like the Navy SEALs of the reading wars.
We try our best. We are relentless, I'll tell you that. We try our best.
That's a great place to take a break, and we're going to come back for part 2.
Sounds great.